The girl next door, who had vowed to join me in taking the university entrance exams, ended up falling for a wealthy, entitled boy. I encouraged her to pursue her aspirations, but she dismissed me as a pushover. They shared a kiss in the rain, raced through the night, and were ultimately expelled from school. After graduating from high school, I secured a place at my dream university, while the affluent boy was sent abroad for his studies. However, she later regretted her decisions, found herself pregnant, and reached out to me to see if I was still willing to love her. Maria was caught skipping class once more. She found herself being reprimanded in the office for the third time that week. A classmate passing by the window of the classroom couldn't help but gossip with a smirk. Meanwhile, I was engrossed in solving complex math problems, my focus unwavering. If Maria continued her behavior, she would have to face the consequences. The classmate scoffed, likely finding my response dull. Back in the day, you and Maria were the top two students, childhood sweethearts, always excelling academically, the perfect couple. Look at you now. Times have surely changed. I ignored his nostalgic and exaggerated remarks, concentrating on finishing my final answer. Suddenly, someone knocked on my desk. Looking up, I saw a girl with a slight frown. Our math teacher. She wanted to see me in the office, probably regarding the recent competition results. I nodded, closed my pen cap, and before leaving, I glanced at the boy leaning against the windowsill. Maria and I were never more than friends. Yeah, sure. Everyone knows she's Ethan's girlfriend now. She's living the high life, relying on her looks, while the rest of us still have to work hard to study. If only I were a girl. His voice faded as I walked away, pushing open the office door. The first thing I saw was Maria standing before the homeroom teacher's desk, receiving another reprimand. Her once shoulder-length hair had grown longer, styled in trendy curls, and her ears, previously unadorned, now featured sparkling diamond studs. I heard they were a gift from Ethan. Maria had never had pierced ears before. She got them solely for those earrings. She frowned slightly, showing no remorse. Upon seeing me, the homeroom teacher's stern expression softened into a smile. Alex, you're here to see the math teacher. Perhaps she heard my name because Maria turned her head. It had been a while since I last saw her. Her once plain face was now expertly made up, masking her former simplicity. I snapped back to reality and nodded at the teacher. The middle-aged woman beamed with joy, her eyes crinkling at the corners. You won first place again in the math competition. The math teacher was visibly pleased. Relief washed over me as I finally relaxed. First place. Although I had been confident, hearing the official results still brought me immense joy. Fantastic. Now I was one step closer to my dream school. As I walked past Maria, I caught a whiff of her sweet, overpowering perfume and couldn't help but sneeze. Her flower-like face paled slightly. Come here, Alex. The award certificate for the competition is ready. Take it home and make your parents proud. The math teacher closed his water bottle and retrieved the certificate from the drawer, handing it to me. He couldn't stop smiling as the other teachers in the office praised my achievement. But my mind drifted back to Maria. Maria, look at yourself and then look at Alex. You both used to be neck and neck in school, just a point apart. For 2 years, you pushed each other to excel. What have you become now? High school is a crucial time in your life. I don't want you to have regrets. Ethan's family is one thing, but you? What do you have? He has a safety net. Do you? His words were interrupted as Ethan, the affluent boy, leaned casually against the office door. Teacher, are you done? I'm here to take Maria to lunch. I turned around just in time to see Maria smiling as she held his hand. Maria would regret this, the math teacher sighed. Will she? Maria assured me she never would. Maria and I had known each other since childhood. Born around the same time in the same hospital and living next door, we were practically inseparable. As we grew older, academic competition became our routine, pushing each other to greater heights and always ranking among the top students. Whether it was first or second place depended on our performance in each exam. At 16, both Maria and I were admitted to this prestigious city high school. In our first year, she stood by my side, the wind blowing through her hair, revealing patches of fair skin. She smiled and said, "Alex, I heard that students from this school get into a city university every year. 3 years from now, we'll be among them." "Right," I replied with a smile, the clarity and innocence in her eyes filled with ambition and a bright vision of the future. Of course, I thought we would continue pushing each other toward our shared dream. But everything changed when Ethan transferred to our class at the start of our third year. Who was Ethan? He was rich, handsome, and had a charm that made him the center of attention. As soon as he arrived, he caught the eyes of many girls, but it was Maria he targeted. I overheard him bragging to his friends. He said those girls who threw themselves at him were boring. "The real fun is with someone like Maria, the good girl. Don't you think it's thrilling to slowly break down a good girl?" Ethan said while leaning against his motorcycle, smoking a cigarette, and his friends laughed in agreement, praising his brilliant insight. At first, I didn't take Ethan's words seriously, considering me arrogant or naive, but I never thought Maria would be attracted to someone who had nothing going for him except money and looks. However, I soon realized how wrong I was. The first time I saw Ethan sitting casually in front of Maria's desk, leaning on his hand and lazily flipping through her papers, I instinctively stepped in to defend her. "Ethan, this isn't right." Ethan looked up at me, his gaze filled with open disdain. "What? Is the class representative supposed to handle this too?" I opened my mouth to argue, but Maria tugged at the corner of my shirt. "It's fine, Alex. Maybe he just needs something from me." When I looked at Maria, I noticed a blush spreading to her ears. After that, everything unfolded as if following the script of some cliched high school romance novel. The free-spirited and passionate Ethan held an irresistible allure for the rule-following Maria, who had been so disciplined all her life. I watched as Maria fell into Ethan's trap, every attempt to intervene only becoming a joke to them. Things reached their peak on Ethan's birthday, which coincided with the midterm exams during our first semester of senior year. That day, as we walked to school, I noticed how distracted Maria seemed. Lately, she had been talking to me less and less because of Ethan. Despite my concern, I couldn't find the words to ask her what was wrong. It wasn't until after I left the exam room that I heard from my classmates that Maria had missed the exam. She had left halfway through the first test, and no one knew where she went. But that night, I saw Ethan's social media post. The Maria who had skipped the exam had gone to celebrate his birthday. In the pictures, they were standing on the highest building in the city, kissing, with the stars twinkling in the sky behind them. It looked romantic, but the cost was that the Maria who had always been at the top of the rankings had fallen to the bottom. New Year's Eve brought constant arguments from Uncle Bob's house next door. I sat at the dinner table, restless. My mother noticed my distraction and suggested I take some New Year's gifts to Uncle Bob's family. I gave her a grateful smile, picked up the gift box, and headed out the door. The front door to Uncle Bob's house was slightly ajar, and as I stood at the entrance, I heard Maria's hysterical screams. "Study, study. Is that all you care about? Have you ever cared about me? Have you ever loved me? Ever since Mom died, have you taken care of me for even a day? In your eyes, I'm nothing but a worthless loser unless I'm studying. Ethan is different. At least he loves me." The door swung open from the inside, and I was caught off guard by Maria's tear-streaked face. We both froze, but Maria quickly composed herself, pushed past me, and stormed down the stairs. The living room was a mess, and Uncle Bob sat slumped on the couch, looking much older than I remembered. Without hesitating any further, I set down the gift box and ran after Maria, but I was too late. By the time I reached the bottom, Maria was already in Ethan's car. I only caught a glimpse of her in the passenger seat, her arms wrapped around Ethan's neck as they kissed. It felt like I'd fallen into an icy pit. "I wanted to tell you it wasn't true, Maria. It's not that no one loves you. Uncle Bob loves you very much. But a father's love is sometimes hidden too deeply. And maybe it's hard for a teenage girl to feel it. But that love was real, undeniable." As Ethan's car slowly drove away, I made a decision in my heart. I wanted to pull her back, whether I succeeded or not. At the very least, I couldn't watch Maria drift further away, so that's what I did. Even though I didn't see Maria much during the winter break, I kept sending her messages, trying to show her that besides Ethan, there were others in the world who cared about her. But Maria never replied. It wasn't until the first day of the last semester of senior year that I saw something that shocked me. On the school bulletin board were screenshots of all the messages I had sent to Maria. She stood next to Ethan, his arm around her waist, watching coldly as our classmates whispered and pointed at me. Even though the weather is starting to warm up, I feel a chill down to my bones. Alex, I know Maria is pretty, but did you really have to throw yourself at her? Hasn't anyone told you not to chase after someone else's girlfriend? Ethan's voice was full of mocking sarcasm, but I didn't care about what he said. I only looked at Maria. In just one winter break, she had changed so much. Her face was sharper and her glasses were gone. The light in her eyes that once shone when she looked at me was nowhere to be found. Maria, do you feel the same way? She didn't answer my question, just leaned against Ethan's arm. Maria, you don't need to get love this way. Is the love Ethan gives you really what you want, even without him? Uncle Bob, my parents, and I all love you. We all want you to be happy. I'm still here, you know. Did you think I was dead? Before I could finish, Ethan shoved Maria aside and grabbed my collar. He looked furious, as if he was about to punch me in the face, but I just stared back at him calmly and softly asked, Ethan, can you honestly say you really love Maria? If you truly loved her, you'd want her to have a better future, not drag her down with you. Ethan listened to my words as if he'd heard the most ridiculous thing ever. He let go of me and turned away. Maria, am I dragging you down? No. Maria's voice came from behind him, cold and unfeeling. I like him. I want to be with him. What does that have to do with you? Her voice was so calm, as if these had always been her true feelings. I like my life now. I like that every day is different. Do you really think living like you, like some old man in your prime years, is the only way to live without regrets? You've made your life so boring. Fine, but why drag me down with you? I couldn't believe what I was hearing from Maria. Her voice remained calm, as if she had always felt this way. So, this is what you always thought of me? What about your dreams? Are you giving those up too? I don't even remember how I managed to ask that question, but I heard my own voice echoing from far away. Maria stepped forward, took Ethan's hand, and looked at him with an infatuated gaze. As long as I have him, that's enough. As the crowd dispersed, I stood there, watching Maria's retreating figure for a long time. I stood frozen, then turned and walked down a completely different path. After that day, I never asked about Maria again, never looked at her grades again. If this was what Maria wanted, then she should go for it with everything she had. Hey, Alex, I heard Maria and Ethan are breaking up again. My deskmate nudged me with his elbow. In the silent classroom where the only sound was pens scratching against paper, his voice stood out. It was now the second half of our senior year, and every student was giving it their all, hoping for higher scores on the college entrance exam. In such a monotonous and high-pressure environment, people needed an outlet for their stress, and Maria and Ethan had become the perfect way to release that pressure. After all, what gossip is better than news about people right in front of you? I glanced up briefly, spotting our homeroom teacher watching us from the podium. If you don't want to get called out after class, I'd suggest you keep your mouth shut. My deskmate flinched and buried his head back into his papers. Maria and Ethan breaking up was nothing new. A wealthy playboy like Ethan never lacked women, and Maria was the type who couldn't tolerate infidelity. Fights, insecurities, breakups, and reconciliations were inevitable. I had intended to let the words pass through one ear and out the other, but to my surprise, Maria, who hadn't been to school in a while, showed up that day. She wasn't wearing her uniform, and it didn't look like she was here to study. She stormed past her classroom and headed straight for the one next door. My classmates, sensing the drama, followed her, and I was dragged along by my deskmate to watch. As we reached the back door of the neighboring classroom, we heard a girl scream, "You bewitching witch! How dare you flirt with my boyfriend!" Inside, Maria had grabbed another girl by the hair and dragged her out of her chair. My deskmate gasped. Whoa, she's acting like a delinquent now. I chuckled, looking at the exaggerated earrings dangling from Maria's ears. Such wild and reckless youth. The girl whose hair Maria was pulling struggled, revealing her face. She was the school's beauty queen. Back when Ethan had first transferred, she had indeed pursued him for a while, but Ethan wasn't interested. How could a girl used to being chased tolerate such rejection? Not long after, she gave up. But judging by the scene now, had she and Ethan reconnected in secret? Maria, are you crazy? Let go of me! The beauty queen screamed loudly, kicking her legs frantically on the ground. But Maria, in her rage, was in no mood to listen. She even raised her hand, ready to slap the beauty queen across the face. Maria, stop it! Ethan's angry shout came from behind. Our classmates, ever perceptive, quickly made way for him. I, too, was dragged by my deskmate into the crowd and watched as Ethan marched toward Maria, pulling her away from the beauty queen. Maria's eyes widened in shock as she stared at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. Ethan, haven't you had enough? Is there anyone else but you by my side? Come on, don't embarrass yourself here. Let's go, I'll buy you that bag you wanted. Okay, Ethan spoke gently, wiping the tears from Maria's face, but she shoved his hand away. Without a word, Maria ran outside and Ethan chased after her. The crowd quickly moved to the railings to witness what happened next. Through the endless curtain of rain, we saw Maria running ahead, Ethan chasing her, and then the two of them embracing tightly in the downpour. Maria pushed him, but he refused to let go, and then he cupped her face and kissed her. The crowd erupted in gasps of astonishment. The commotion continued until our homeroom teacher arrived, and the principal led the two rain-soaked lovebirds away. I returned to my seat, and my deskmate asked what I thought of the scene. I looked at the unfinished questions on my exam paper, recalling what I'd just seen. Two fools in love. They're crazy. Men, you really are the class genius. That's spot on. The price of giving our classmates such a dramatic show was that both Ethan and Maria were called to meet with their parents. Ethan got off easy with a phone call from his dad, and the whole thing was brushed under the rug. But for Maria, Uncle Bob had no choice but to come in person. I didn't know what was said in the principal's office, but as I was walking down the hallway to turn in my homework, I ran into Uncle Bob, the man who had always been so full of energy, briefly dejected years ago when Aunt Bob passed away. He now looked as if he had aged 10 years, his back hunched. When he saw me, he seemed a bit flustered and gave me a shy smile. Alex, it's been a while. Uncle Bob smiled again when he saw the paper in my hand. Another perfect score, I see. You've always been a great student, never giving your parents any trouble. Maria's dedication to her studies all these years is thanks to your help, Uncle Bob. You don't have to say that. Maria is naturally smart. Yes, she is. She takes after her mother. But what happened to her now? Uncle Bob's voice trailed off, and his cloudy eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how to comfort him. I just stood there awkwardly, waiting for him to regain his composure. Fortunately, Uncle Bob didn't keep me waiting long. He patted my shoulder and spoke softly. Do well on your college entrance exams. Go to Beijing. Make your parents proud. I snapped out of my daze, watching him walk away, and found it hard to connect this frail figure with the strong man who used to pick up Maria and me from our extracurricular classes. Of all the people affected by Maria's transformation, Uncle Bob suffered the most. Perhaps it was because of the romantic drama they staged that day, but Maria and Ethan actually started coming back to school. However, attending classes didn't mean they were paying attention to their studies. Our homeroom teacher, being extra considerate, moved their seats to the very back of the classroom. Once the teacher's favorite, Maria had now become the type of student she used to despise. Alex, aren't you bored from studying all the time? Why don't you come race with us after school? Ethan's voice sounded beside me, but I didn't bother looking up. Not interested. Find someone else. Instead of leaving after my refusal, he reached over and snatched the pen from my fingers. Finally, I had no choice but to look at him. The privileged boy's face was full of arrogance. Ethan glanced at my exam paper and smirked with disdain. What's the point of being good at school? You'll still end up working for my family's company, Alex. Even if I'm a waste of space, I'm the kind of waste you'll never be able to reach. They all call you a genius, a top student, but so what? In the end, I'm still better than you. I sat there listening to Ethan's arrogant speech, not responding until he noticed my gaze and frowned. What's that look for? Nothing. I just think you're pitiful. What did you say? Ethan reached out to grab my collar as he always did, but I shifted slightly, causing him to grab nothing but air. Isn't it pitiful? Everything you have is because someone else gave it to you. If it weren't for your dad, no one would care about you, and yet you're so smug, looking down on people who work hard to achieve success. Ask your dad, if he were running the company all by himself, would it still be as successful as it is now? Would he dare say yes? He wouldn't. Because unlike you, he's not an idiot. I watched Ethan's face twist in rage, then stood up and calmly took back the pen from his hand. Ethan, I can say with confidence that no matter where I go, I'll find a way to succeed. Can you say the same? For someone like you, calling you a waste would be a compliment. Who the hell do you think you are, Alex? Ethan's fist came flying at me and gasps erupted from our classmates. But before his fist could make contact with my face, I caught it in my hand. It couldn't move an inch further. His face flushed red, but he couldn't pull his hand back. See, I told you. Calling you a waste was giving you too much credit. I let go, and Ethan stumbled back a few steps, caught just in time by Maria, who had rushed over to support him. It seemed like he found something to retort with, sneering. So what? Maria still likes me. I sat back down, flipping through the textbook in front of me. She can love whoever she wants. It's none of my business. Don't act like you don't care. Everyone knows you used to like Maria. I never liked her. I looked up, meeting Maria's eyes, and spoke clearly, one word at a time. I didn't think my words would have any particular effect on you, but I did have feelings for you. At the very least, I started learning Taekwondo because of you. In elementary school, on our way home from school, Maria and I encountered a child trafficker. She was nearly kidnapped. If it hadn't been for an adult passing by and rescuing us, I can't imagine what would have happened. From that day on, I asked my parents to sign me up for Taekwondo classes because I wanted to protect you. But I never asked if you even needed my protection. Looking back now, you probably didn't. That evening, as I arrived home, I saw Maria waiting at my doorstep. She had red lipstick on and wore a black spaghetti-strap dress that was far too mature for her age. She just stood there, looking at me. Do you need something? Maria seemed hesitant, and the motion sensor light turned off, leaving us in darkness. In the quiet, I heard her voice. Alex, did you really never like me? I stood on the steps, wondering if I should spend the weekend at the study hall. No, that's impossible. Maria's voice suddenly rose, and when the light came back on, I saw the surprise in her eyes. Why are you so surprised? I stepped past her, took my keys out of my pocket, and prepared to enter the house, my tone indifferent. Does it matter? Would knowing I liked you make you feel any better? That's not what I mean. Before Maria could finish her sentence, the sound of a car horn came from downstairs. Ethan's waiting for you, isn't he? You should go. Don't bother me while I study. She stamped her foot in frustration, clearly annoyed. Alex, why are you always so boring? Study, study. Is that all you know? What else can you do besides study? We only get to be 18 once. Don't you want to see how bright your 18 can be? The door clicked open. I turned to look at her, confused. Maria, I think I'm doing just fine. The world in books is no less brilliant than yours. Why do you all think I'm repressing myself? That I'm compromising? Why don't any of you ever consider that this is my choice? It's my choice to live this way. The car horn downstairs grew more insistent, and Maria finally turned and left. I couldn't help asking, have you thought about it? What will you do if you can't get into college? I have Ethan. Her figure grew smaller and smaller, fading into the darkness. But Maria was wrong. The only thing we can truly rely on is ourselves. June arrived, bringing the heat of summer and the time when all senior students fought their final battle. On the day of the college entrance exam, I gathered all my supplies and opened the front door. Just like any other day, my parents were there. "Mom, Dad, I'm heading out. Take care on the road." I came to my senses and saw my father standing behind me and my mother holding a fried dough stick, smiling warmly. "Good luck, son." I nodded firmly and glanced at the closed door across the street. I had imagined countless times what I would feel like on the day of the college entrance exam. Excitement, anxiety, but no matter what I thought, I always pictured Maria by my side. In reality, the people you think will always be there for you have long since left, and there was no excitement or nervousness. When I saw the exam paper, all I felt was calm, like the still waters of a lake. I had lived up to my youth, and I had lived up to myself. The end of the college entrance exam meant the graduation banquet. The same classmates who used to curse and say they couldn't wait to graduate were now hugging each other, crying. Maria and Ethan, of course, didn't attend. I sat at the table eating my meal when our homeroom teacher walked over with 2 glasses of red wine and handed me one without asking. "We've all graduated now. A little drink won't hurt." She had already drunk with many of the students that night. Her face slightly flushed, and she was chattier than usual. "I still remember when you and Maria first walked in together on the first day of freshman year. The principal told me that you two were the stars of this class. I thought, wow, a boy and a girl, the main characters of a novel, have come to my classroom. I was worried that you two would develop some inappropriate feelings during high school. But who would have thought you'd both focus solely on your studies? You pushed each other so hard that you left 3rd place far behind. Sometimes I wondered if the two of you had studied yourselves into a stupor. I thought you'd both keep walking down that path together. Who could have guessed that Maria would stray so far? Alex, I know you don't talk about it, but I know it hurts. You and Maria grew up together. Watching her go down a different path must be harder for you than anyone else. But I want you to remember, in this world, everyone has the right to choose their own path. You can feel regret for her, but you can't resent her, understand? I knew this was the last lesson my teacher wanted to impart to me. I stared at the deep red wine in my glass and drank it in one gulp. "I understand." "Thank you, teacher." She patted my shoulder and stood up. "You're smart. I'm not worried about you." The wine was bitter. The long-awaited summer break turned out to be no different from the past ones. I got my driver's license, did some volunteer work, and went on a trip with friends, but the one who should have been living her best life. Maria remained silent on social media. When the exam results were released, as expected, I couldn't find my score. It wasn't until the admissions office in Beijing called my parents that they finally believed it. Their son had been accepted into the best university in the country. In that moment, seeing the smiles and tears on their faces, I realized that every late night of studying, every cup of coffee had been worth it. I was the top science student of the year. The principal hung banners around the school to celebrate, and waves of reporters rushed to interview me. Standing at the school gate, surrounded by the crowd, I couldn't help but notice a few pairs of bright, clear eyes in the sea of people. They reminded me of the old Maria. A reporter asked if I had anything I wanted to say. I hesitated for a moment, tugging at my sleeve. "I want to say that we only get one youth, but don't think that reckless abandon is the only way to experience it. Every piece of knowledge you gain from books, every character you write down, that's your youth. Youth is within you, not in some novel. Live in the moment. Don't betray yourself, and don't betray all the nights you spent studying. That's youth." In that moment, my vision blurred, and in my mind's eye, I saw the hunched figure sitting at a desk surrounded by towering stacks of books and papers. That was me, 16-year-old Alex. I've done it. I've fulfilled your wish. After returning home from school, my mother told me that Maria had failed her college entrance exams. Apparently, she fainted during the last test and was rushed to the hospital. Her score would only get her into a vocational college. I was stunned, feeling a bit dazed. Vocational college? I had never associated that term with Maria. Instinctively, I reached for my phone, wanting to send her a message. But when the moment came, I didn't know what to say. Ethan hadn't even taken the exam. His father had already arranged for him to attend a university abroad. So, what about Maria? That night, I was jolted awake by loud arguing from Maria's house next door. I turned on the light and headed outside, only to find my parents already in the hallway. The door to Maria's house was open, and Uncle Bob stood barefoot in the living room. Maria was nowhere to be seen. My father walked over and patted Uncle Bob's back. "Old friend, what's going on so late at night?" Uncle Bob let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "That boy wants to break up with Maria, and she ran off in a rage. At this late hour, it wasn't safe for Maria to be out alone." After telling my parents, I grabbed my phone and went out to look for her. I found Maria and Ethan outside a bar not far from the neighborhood. Ethan had his arm around another girl. "I've made myself clear. Let go. I'm done with you." "Okay, take the money and get lost," Ethan shouted, pulling a card from his pocket and throwing it in Maria's face. She fell to the ground, watching as his sports car sped away. I walked over, intending to help her up, but she shoved me away. "You're here to laugh at me too, aren't you, Alex? I don't need your fake kindness. I didn't do anything wrong. At least I loved passionately. I'll never regret it." As I watched Maria's trembling figure disappear into the night, I wasn't sure if she was saying those words to me or to herself. In September, I boarded a plane to Beijing. Before the flight, I received a call from Maria, someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. Her voice was hoarse, carrying a note of desperation. "Alex, I'm pregnant." Her fainting during the exam now made sense. I didn't stop walking as I gazed out at the clear blue sky, my tone calm. "Maria, you had your carefree youth, and I have my future to reach. We were never on the same path." After saying that, I immediately hung up the phone and blocked her number. Life at the university in Beijing was fulfilling. I didn't choose Tsinghua. Instead, I enrolled at Peking University. Time spent with classmates in the library, conversations with professors, and occasional moments of relaxation made life feel beautiful. Throughout the 4 years of college, I lived a remarkably fulfilling life. Wanting more of it, I decided to continue my studies. During my second year of graduate school, I heard that the Liu family had gone bankrupt. Ethan was never cut out for business. After returning from his overseas studies, he made a mess of the company, even firing several key engineers. In the end, he was undone by the very workers he had always looked down upon. Later, after completing my master's degree, I returned to my hometown to start my own business. Uncle Bob's family had already moved away. My mother told me that Maria didn't choose to have an abortion but gave birth to the child. She kept holding on to the hope that she and Ethan could start over, clinging to that dream as she remained behind. Uncle Bob had heard enough of the gossip and eventually sold the house, moving to the countryside on his own. Another summer arrived and my business was starting to thrive. The company was expanding and we needed to hire more people. There, on the list of interviewees, I saw a name I recognized: Ethan. When Ethan saw me, his face darkened, but at his assistant's reminder, he stood up and addressed me. "Mr. Chen." I smiled and nodded, gesturing for him to sit down. The interview lasted barely 2 minutes before I realized Ethan had nothing substantial to offer. He was entirely unqualified. Predictably, he didn't make the cut. As I watched him leave, my assistant whispered to me. Gossiping, I heard he used to be the young master of the Liu family. After the bankruptcy, he's had a tough time, with a kid and an uneducated wife to support. Life sure is unpredictable. So, Maria did get what she wanted after all, I mused, sipping my tea and continuing to review the resumes in front of me. Yes, life is full of surprises. These two, let's keep them, boss. But these two are fresh graduates. They don't have much experience. If we don't hire them and no one else does, how will they ever get experience? People need someone to hold an umbrella for them every now and then.